Naelewa hatari ya siasa ya kugawanya watu kwa misingi ya ukabila. Nataka niwasihi, tafadhali, nirudie tena, tafadhali, sisi tulio viongozi tusitembee barabara telezi ya kugawanya Wakenya kwa misingi ya kabila.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program tonight. Let's start off right there. Well, what an interesting set of developments. It might have seemed like there was a pause button, but then things then kicked up a notch once again on Madaraka Day, which was held on Saturday. So, Sam, bring us up to date with where we are in what seems to be happening in Mount Kenya region as a whole, but particularly between the president and his deputy. You know, he seemed to, you know the saying, don't come through corners, come to me direct. But it would seem there was a little bit of shadow boxing on this one.
It's been a very interesting week because the last time we were here on Thursday last week, it was the evening of the National Prayer Breakfast where a lot of prayers were said at the Safari Park for different reasons, including the success of the country, the productivity of the agricultural sector, and the food safety. Then 2 days later, the meeting was at the Masinda Muliro Stadium, that is in Kandui, Bungoma County. And of course, many were expecting to hear, because the Deputy President had been saying a few things in a different language that had to be translated for the rest of the country to understand. One would have expected that you would hear him say more about what exactly he has been up to. But if you recall, during that event, the Deputy President's speech was very brief, that he only came, acknowledged the protocol, cracked a few jokes about the
US trip.
local governor, that is Governor of Bungoma.
Yes.
Then went ahead to digress and say that before the invention of Manchester United and Arsenal, he used to be a fan of the clash between the AFC and Gor Mahia. And he ended up saying that he's a fan of AFC Leopards. And that was it. And he sat down. So very brief statement that he made. And then after that, you realize that the president went on to address the nation. Very lengthy speech, but also in it, he spoke about the unity of the country. Now, what happened after that was actually more newsy than actually the speeches that were made at Madaraka Day, because that evening, that's when Deputy President was attending an event in some part in Mount Kenya, and went ahead there to speak about many issues, including the unity of the region, asking the people of that region to be wary of their leaders and to also ask them why they're not with the Deputy President. And actually on Sunday, that's when you had a lot of responses coming from leaders accompanying President William Ruto, but also we also heard from Musalia Mudavadi. So you would have thought that once the weekend of self-rule, that is Madaraka Day, that those conversations would sort of go down. But the Deputy President has continued with his clamor for unity in the region. Of course, there are those that are opposed to that, and even some members of parliament have been responding to him in regards to his position when it comes to the unity of Mount Kenya, but also this campaign that has been pitching about 1 man, 1 shilling, 1 vote.
Yvonne, speaking about the issues that have been happening and how much has happened between last week, Thursday, and today, this part has become completely public. I say this because whenever there's any event which the Deputy President is attending, or if the President or any of those members of Parliament or CSS who support either of them are, chances are they'll speak about this, whether directly criticizing or indirectly criticizing, or using mafumbo kidogo, or speaking openly about the spat that is there. They are all talking about it. And it kind of reminds me of when the spat between William Ruto, who was the Deputy President in the last administration, and the then President Uhuru Kenyatta started. By the time I think the spat was becoming public, I think it had gone on for quite a while. But this one is barely 2 years since this administration came into office, and already cracks not emerging, have emerged, and they're widening every day. Brings to mind what exactly the space of politics is in our country at this point in time, Yvonne. Yeah. I keep remembering what you said last week in your take about everything else that's happening in every other sector, from health to education to no vaccines to those still being affected by the floods. Demolitions are still going on. We have issues about capitation and university funding. We still have clinical officers on strike and laboratory technicians on strike. We have a budget that's bringing issues. The Finance Bill 2024 being discussed by everybody, almost everyone against it, except those who are in government who are supporting it. Kenyans complaining about what it's doing to them. The InfoTrack poll that was done today, and the overwhelming rejection of the Finance Bill, 80-something% of the provisions in it. I think the concentration and the time should be given to those issues that really, really matter. Because come next week, we've mentioned it in our first word, that all eyes will be on Parliament.
Yeah.
And people need to watch and see what the parliamentarians will do. And even something that came up, I think, yesterday when we were watching the Finance Bill, even us as journalists who have a role to break down information and understand, actually struggle with what the provisions of what the Finance Bill has. And like the budget, they have a Mwananchi version of it, that kind of tries to break down what's in it. But this Finance Bill is almost jargon. The language used in there is almost all technical. That it's really, really difficult to even understand what it is, what is in it. Why don't you use time to do public participation, even in vernacular languages, so that when people are talking about what is in it, wanaelewa wanasema nini, but we are all consumed by the public spat that's going on, that the nitty-gritty and the important issue that we need to be concentrating on is almost being forgotten.
Jamila, you mentioned jargon and vernacular, but and that is precisely the language of choice in terms of addressing each other, it would seem, between the president and his deputy. So one of the things that we see happening, in vernacular is, the deputy president goes to his base, uses vernacular to express himself, and then you hear the president seemingly responding to him, but in English or Kiswahili. And you know how politics is. The deputy president is on record this week as saying politics is local. And indeed, that's why he chooses the local language. So I want us to take a look at just, the responses, the shadow boxing, basically. The deputy president says one thing in his mother tongue, and his boss responds in another language.
The future of our nation is great. We are a great nation. We are a blessed country. Na msikubali, na waomba kwa unyenyekevu, wale wanaotutabiria giza na kututabiria maovu kule mbele, hizo ndimi naomba maaskofu muombe zikome. I am very confident about the future of Kenya. What we need is to stay united.
A lot of what is happening here seems awfully familiar. This is taking the exact same route, as Jamila said, that began with, the previous duo, for lack of a better phrase. And it starts like this, people sort of throwing jabs at, at supposedly nobody. But, it's very clear. You're the better student of history, I think, around this table, Linus. What's happening here?
I'm tempted to quote Edgar Hoover, a very well-known former director of the FBI, but I think the details of that quote may not meet the watershed requirements. He said something, but I'll create my own analogy because it's simply this way. Rigathi Gachagua, the deputy president, has basically been, had his hand on the trigger right from day one. Whether you remember his speech during the inauguration in the Moi International Sports Center, Kasarani, he was shooting. And I think the problem now is arising here. He has never fired internally. Now he has turned the gun or whatever he's using to shoot, and it's facing in the direction of the party itself. Whether through his supporters or directly in some cases, he's fired at the State House. And I think he's been consistent on that, except for a little break that preceded this explosion. But the president and his team was quiet all this time when Gachagua, for example, went with a divisive narrative about shareholders. And, you know, we've covered him repeatedly in the first year of office, saying the government belongs to the people that voted for it. And they'll be served first, and you pick your number, you'll be served later.
To shortly.
And then suddenly the president is talking, no, that's divisive. It's unity when he talks about Mount Kenya.
Yeah.
What is so wrong about Gachagua speaking to the shareholders of one side is because there is a problem amongst the shareholders. And that is the valley and the mountain. There is a problem right there. And I would like us to just, Robert, have a look at cabinet secretaries joining in, the president taking the cue from the president from the Madaraka Day speech. We've had comments from the CS Interior and CS Defense and also the Prime Cabinet Secretary. Let's listen to them.
Nchi yetu ya Kenya imewahi kupata matatizo. Tungetaka kuhimiza ya kwamba taifa letu ni moja. We are one indivisible, united country, and we should not take the unity of our country, the security of our country, the stability of our country, we should not take it for granted, because in the past we have suffered.
And we should not have this story of one county, Mandera County, against Kiambu County. Mandera County or Wajir County against Kisumu County. The people who live in all these 47 counties are Kenyans.
Where were these sound bites when the shareholders talk was all over? Because shareholders was actually more divisive than the current battle, which is Gachagua living to his mantra, basically, of saying politics is local first. I'm going to be the regional kingpin. Because there's one thing that you cannot deny about how Gachagua has conducted the office of the deputy president. He's never pretended to be deputy president of the republic. First, he's been very clear about region first. He's been very clear about shareholders. And who are shareholders? It's voters from Mount Kenya and voters from the Rift Valley. They have community names that voted, basically, that were the base of the UDA Kenya Kwanza ticket. So that divisive phase was let to pass, but now it's becoming an issue because it's going to divide the base itself, because now it's going to cause internal strife within the UDA Kenya Kwanza community. It wasn't an issue when he was firing at the rest, but now it's an issue because some of the shrapnels are actually landing within the room.
Is it that he's seeming to cut, a lone figure? Perhaps as part of that shareholding experience, he goes back to his base and says, this is what I'm doing. I want us to listen to him just talking about, moving around Mount Kenya. And then perhaps we can listen to that together with him talking about working alone, seemingly. Let's listen.
mukamoria mwagite gukorwo na mutongoria wanyu kai mwinau twari na kunda gutume aria maragia kanwa ka mundu ungi akiaria tu oraria ni uraigwa ni mundu ungi oraria tondu wa murora biu ndagiru ni kwaria meari yo tondu ndiratwarana na ruriri rwitu andu acio nimo tukwenda twimenyerere gutingituika ri gathi wa Gachagua akuruta wira ari wiki mwana umwe tindiri katigu andu aitu aheshimiwa aya mwoka gicagi mukamoria kiuria murugameire ha urumwe wa ruriri murugameire ha ugai wa besha wa one man one vote one shilling.
Again, retreats into, by the way, this was at a cultural music event.
Yeah.
Right.
And then goes into vernacular and says, you know, it cannot be that I will work alone as if I am in government alone. All politics is local. Jamila, Sam?
Waswahili husema before Sam comes in, mchezo kwao hutuzwa. And he needs to be seen as kiongozi wa Mlima Kenya. Because ukiangalia kisiasa sasa, ukiangalia hierarchy ilivyo.
Isn't he though already, Jamila? I mean, he's the highest ranking leader from the region.
Then why the need to like kukumbusha watu kama ina kiongozi, because there is opposition to him, and it's vocal opposition that everyone is saying. So I think for him he's saying wacha nirudi kwa wananchi. Yeah, these are the people who gave over whatever percent of the votes to the Kenya Kwanza government and helped elect President William Ruto. And there were expectations with the votes that were given by that region, expectations that may not have been met, maybe to Rigathi Gachagua's satisfaction. That's why he's retreating back to the people. He's attending so many of these events where he's speaking to people in the vernacular language because he wants them to understand that I'm here. Hey, look at me. I'm fighting for your rights and for what will be good for you. 1 shilling, 1 man, 1 vote is good for this region. So anaenda kutafuta uungwaji mkono nyumbani kwa wananchi. Kwa sababu he's clearly seen that uungwaji anaotaka kutoka kwa viongozi wenzake, he's not getting it as he should. They're speaking against him publicly. Those who are accompanying the president are clearly saying that mambo sio mazuri.
Okay, but whose hand is in this? Because, you know, there seems to be a boogeyman in this conversation. You know, in the beginning he talked about people who are around the president, who are the ones who are trying to sow division between him and the president. In that clip we've just heard, he talks about those people who move around Mount Kenya, and they are the people we should be cautious about. You know, so now we've created this boogeyman, and yet, you know, we're not naming names directly. So
first of all, what does he mean that he cannot work alone? So why is he working alone?
Exactly.
Why is he only with Jane Kihara from Naivasha? She's not from Mount Kenya. She's not. She's not elected to represent a constituency that is in Mount Kenya region. Her constituency is in Nakuru County.
West Valley, yeah.
So why is he alone? It is him to answer. Secondly, when you said that leaders should be asked why they are not with him, I find that unfair to the rest of the leaders, because every leader is elected, takes a separate oath of office. It is them to decide how they are going to serve their constituents who elected them into office. It is them to decide where they go every weekend, because they have the freedom of movement and also freedom of association. If he had rallied those members of parliament or those leaders that he's talking about to an extent that they will walk with him to those meetings, then that's a different question. Has he communicated to them what agenda he has? Because yes, clearly he says 1 man, 1 vote, 1 shilling. But also, does he mind breaking that down on what exactly it means? Because like we said last week, there's a formula on how resources are shared, and it is developed by the Commission on Revenue Allocation. It is taken through different institutions, including IBEC, the Intergovernmental Budget and Economic Council, or is it committee, that he actually chairs. And eventually it is Senate that approves that formula. So is he saying that the current formula being used to distribute resources to the counties does not respect the number of voters that are in a region or in a county? And the other thing would be, so while all this is happening, isn't that incitement of the people against their leaders? Then you listen to what the members of the cabinet are saying, and it looks quite scripted. It is not just that it's a response coming from nowhere.
It's choreographed.
It's choreographed, such that they knew too well that on Saturday, during the Madaraka Day, they were all together, members of the cabinet, at the Masinda Muliro Stadium. Thereafter, the deputy president left and went to that event in Mount Kenya. So the cabinet secretaries that remained with the president knew too well that the deputy president was not with them. and they must have listened to what he said in the night, because that communication may have come to them. So those responses, you can clearly see where they are headed. There are other questions to be asked, because if you're to look at even the roles assigned to the Deputy President, and I just want to walk through the mandate of the Office of the Deputy President as defined by the Executive Order number 2 of 2023, but that the Deputy President shall deputize the President in execution of the President's function in accordance with Article 147 of the Constitution, shall chair Cabinet committees, shall oversee implementation of Cabinet decisions across all ministries and state departments, shall coordinate the intergovernmental relations between the national government and the county government, liaison with constitutional commissions and independent offices in matters that require intervention by the national government. Another function or mandate given to the Deputy President's office is to coordinate the planning and supervise the implementation of development partners funded programs, to oversee public sector reforms and any other function as may be assigned by the President. So you wonder, the new function of 1 man, 1 vote, 1 shilling, where has it been assigned? Does it cover any other function as may be assigned by the President? I want us to listen to the Deputy President's interpretation of what you have just read as he interprets what he believes to be his role.
Wira wakwa ni guteithiriria president gutongoria Kenya. Nona ngimuteithia gutongoria Kenya ni wira wakwa guikara ndiritho kurora maundu ma nyumba ino itu batikae kuhitana.
He says, but even as he helps him in those duties that you have, enlisted,
right,
it is also his duty to take care of the interests of the people of Mount Kenya region. So again, it's back to the shareholder conversation.
So if that is true, then it should not be a problem. The people would know, the members of parliament that are supposed to be following him, according to him, never mind they are an independent house called parliament. I mean, they only report to the Speaker during the sittings, other they are independent to express themselves in whatever manner that they want. So there's something there that he has not defined what exactly it is. And I remember speaking to one of the members of parliament from that region early in the week, and he was saying that they are getting out to a situation where they are being insulted, because there's some names that have been highlighted. I don't remember what those names were, but it's sort of mudslinging. So you wonder to what end if this continues.
Yeah.
Let me just add on to what Sam is illustrating here. And one of the things that are really at play are political grievances whose details are yet to be known. Because at this stage, I think we should rule out one thing. We should rule out the name of the people. Politicians use the people in many, many ways. And now they're talking of national unity. It's not really about them. It's about, in a fight, how do we paint the other guy poorly? Because, like I said earlier, Gachagua has been let to do what he's done all this time. And even, I remember when he was being named running mate. And there was a reason for that, because this is the guy who, he's a gunner in military terms. I mean, he shells without flinching, and so you needed him. Especially to go for Uhuru Kenyatta. And remember, he did, and nobody was spared. Not even the former president's mother was spared. So this was their guy, and he's done those things exactly that way. Only that this time, it looks like the IEDs are
friendly fire.
Yeah, within the house. But there are many unknowns, especially on part of political grievances. Is it about the role he should be playing as deputy president? Remember, even with a progressive constitution as ours, finding a proper role for a deputy president, and just like a vice president in America, is still a big challenge, because the deputy president, vice president should be principal assistant, whatever that means.
Yeah.
It's a bit like becoming a best man in a wedding. I mean, it's a very good name, best man, meaning are you best than the groom? No, don't think that way. So the office itself is what I would call a political middle child. So it can be really problematic.
So,
but it is also a continuation. What we are seeing is a continuation of the very bad start Uhuru Ruto gave to the Constitution of Kenya 2010 with regard to the office of the president and the office of that of the deputy president. This arrangement presupposes discipline, presupposes civility, presupposes a good working arrangement between a president and a running mate, between running mates rather. And, you know, we adopted the American system. And in the American system, you know, and I always pick the Clinton-Al Gore ticket as one of the best illustrations of what running mates should be. You know, you bring some strength. But here, you know, we look at things differently. It's about ethnic mobilization. And in the case of Ruto Gachagua, basically, they were looking for somebody who can fight Uhuru Kenyatta. And in Gachagua, they got him. And that phase is over. And when it ends, what do you do with the warrior? I think there's some progress going on right now.
Yeah, and that's why he is not a happy man. You know, when they say that this is a figment of people's imagination, it may well be, but they're the ones who are saying there's a problem, particularly with the deputy president himself saying he is not happy. Let's listen. Yeah, Linus, in his own words.
Yeah.
He'll speak when things
He is not happy. When you don't see him, no things are going astray.
Exactly. But what things have gone astray?
That's what you were saying. They don't tell us.
Yeah, they don't tell us. The grievances are not known. And by the way, they could be anything. And we sat Professor Macharia Munene here. We sat Professor Gagwanja here. Mombingaru. They were here. And we asked specifically, what are the grievances? What are the issues? And the issues could range from personal to regional.
Ahadi ambazo hazijatimizwa, Linus.
Ahadi ambazo hazijatimizwa.
But even those ahadis we don't know about, right?
Especially how much leeway does a deputy president have? Say, and we are speculating here, we may be wrong, like how many political appointments is he able to influence? How about contracts? And you know very well that, let's admit it, our politics is constructed on a base of tenders and tenderpreneurs. And these are very rice, beans, and such things. Sugar. You know, it wasn't given to the most competent farmer. It went to somebody. And those things, when they shortchange each other on those things, they actually translate to the... And I'm saying again, we are speculating purely.
I know we are, but let's take a look at history, though. You know, many people saying this is happening, as Jamila said, barely 2 years into this administration. But this seems to be what happens between a president and his deputy in this country. I mean, many will remember in our civics lessons how, you know, the late President Moi, it was one after the other. I think one of them, who's today Prime Cabinet Secretary, served for...
how long?
Yeah, so, I mean, so what is this? Because, you know, take us down this route, because we clearly have been here before, again and again.
What it is, and I'll put it in, can we call it light terms? First, job security happened.
Okay.
The position of vice president, deputy president used to be one of the most insecure jobs ever. Actually, it was the most insecure job anybody can ever get.
The 1 p.m. news was
1
where
PM
they...
News, yes. And you can lose that job at any moment.
Yeah.
But then came the Constitution of Kenya 2010 and adopted the American system.
But did it help?
Yeah,
it did.
There like defined
because
it did.
They still fall apart.
No, because our Constitution is ahead of the politicians that we have. This is not the quality of the country that the Constitution of Kenya 2010 presupposes. You read that document, it's way ahead of its time. you know, it's got people. I mean, it's a bit like. I think that example is not appropriate.
Okay. Wow, there's many inappropriate examples.
Yes, because look, you have a nice constitution. It's written for civilized people.
Okay.
You know, a president and a deputy president who can relate well, and you know, you even have the discipline and restraint to understand that, you know, this is the space we operate in, and it's about mutual respect, and the Constitution expects us not to talk that way to each other, and all that. So the Constitution of Kenya 2010 brought job security, and as William Ruto and Uhuru Kenyatta proved, for 10 years they bickered.
Right.
And basically, and now we can, and we said it before, that what it was about is we had the deputy president at the time already looking 10 years ahead and saying he's going to be president in 2022. You remember that? And that was the talk. And so could we probably be witnessing the same scenario where those who are interested in becoming president, presumably after 2 terms of President Ruto, are then following the same old script and saying, mapema ndio best, start now. Dislodge Gachagua, he shouldn't be a factor in 2027, so that he's not a factor in 2032.
Yeah.
And these are the selfish games that politicians play. And it's becoming a very sad reality increasingly in Kenya. And Jamila, what you're talking about, big issues being... look, they don't think that way. Look at what is bringing the conversation about national unity, what is making cabinet secretaries talking about 2007. It's not about the big issues. It's about their narrow, very, very selfish interests.
Yeah, you know, it's reminded me actually of probably one of the first warning shots that we heard from the president. I don't know if you remember this. He was meeting, was it a caucus of women leaders from Kenya Kwanza? Was it either earlier this year or late last year, where he said, and I promise you that the next running mate will be a woman.
What were you saying? What was he saying about his?
You know,
his current
so and you know, those were shots that were fired very early on. You know, in this conversation, I think even way before we had the deputy president saying he's retreating into the mountains to, you know, reflect and find himself and pray and, you know, all of those things. But you know, I mean, man, there's lots of friendly fire going around, you know, in this administration. Some may say, well, maybe not take it too seriously, but, you know, when it's the president, you know, making those remarks, I mean, suddenly we have to take him at his word at least.
And also because, you see, like Lena says, we don't know what the reasons are. They're not telling us and probably won't tell us, but there has been a lot of writings that have been done speculating the issues, whether it's about the trip to Bomet, that he had no military aircraft, to him being asked to, him asking to hire, and the chopper that he was to hire was not available immediately, to him taking some time to go reflect in the mountain. And of course, what is coming out, you can see there's so much behind the scenes that you're not being told. Some have even spoken about it could be the budget cuts that are going on between the office of the president and the office of the deputy president. There's a feeling of unfair targeting. So as that happens, we still have to ask the questions about like, for instance, if you're to generally speak about the democracy of this country, who is the leader of Northeastern Province? If anyone knows.
But we only seem to talk about the leader of Mount Kenya.
Who is the leader of Western Kenya?
Okay, let's not do Western Kenya because...
No.
Luya unity is elusive.
Who is the leader of, I mean, many parts that you can speak about, including when you go to Mount Kenya, there is Mount Kenya East, there's Mount Kenya West. So who is supposed to be leading where? So really, it's a conversation that it's pretty unfortunate that you should actually be speaking about it, but also considering the fact that even the officers that are now they'll be marking 2 years since the election, they have so much work to do, including parliamentarians that should actually be reading and understanding the finance bill. When you see them moving around the country, fine, again, it's within their constitutional right to move. but how many of them understand the content of the bill? So when they appear together with leaders, whether the national level or regional level, to be seen to be in solidarity, what is going on behind the scenes and what should be facilitating the work that they do, which is primarily to legislate, to oversight, and also to represent the people. And you can tell that this is quite a war that we'll see a lot about it. This morning, you saw the leader of majority at the National Assembly, that is Kimani Ichung'wah, giving a speech to the members of parliament. And he attributed a certain quote to people that are quoted, famous people.
Yes.
And he was saying that you can't build a kingdom with someone who still wants the attention from the village. And he said he's just quoting. Of course, it's not just another quote. It's not taken from the finance bill or from the standing orders. When he says such a statement on the floor of the House, he is clearly saying something based on what has been happening in the political circle. And actually, is it yesterday that we had the deputy president, or maybe the day before? It could be yesterday, actually. That he was saying that let them come and speak here. What they are saying there in Western, let them move from Western and come and say it here. And I think one of the leaders who was in Western Kenya was Kimani Ichung'wah. So really, what is this? And again, the voters in this country, and also in Mount Kenya, what are they supposed to be thinking when they hear their leaders speaking the way they are? Yet they're still dealing with the real issues that are of concern, whether it's about the future of their children, the future of their businesses, the future of their farms, the agricultural sector, and everything else.
So what next? Linus, as just on what he has said, so what next? So where are we going to go after this? So are we going to keep Rushanari Maneno in parliament, at rallies,
parables,
at meeting, in church, parables? So for how long are we going to have this back and forth? Pande moja unazungumza, wengine wanapokea. So when will this all end? And so what will be the resolution? So are we going to see something big happen, or are we going to keep having this? We can't have this for the next almost 3 years. Something's got to give. No, there has to be a next step.
But sadly, though, they're stuck together, though.
Yeah. You'll actually see it for the next 3 years. Because what is going on right now is all this is just about political mobilization. Winning over voters, mobilizing communities. It's down to that. And let's have no pretenses about it. Both sides are actually aiming for the same goal. Mount Kenya is being contested, and it's because it is a very, very populated area. And then also there is obviously a psychological game community. They are talking about, we had better make sure Rigathi Gachagua doesn't win that contest that is starting within the Mount Kenya region. Because where have we placed the fact that even our voting patterns are tribal? You'll have to mobilize the community first, and then the region around it. In the case of Mount Kenya, then there'll be Mount Kenya East, there'll be those areas around that. So what is going on right now is mobilization. And these games will continue for as long as the politicians have the indiscipline to carry it on.
Yeah, I know you talked about, what pertains now in the current constitution, versus pre-2010, because sadly what you've said is true, that we are going to live through this for the next 3 years, because they're joined at the hip constitutionally. It is one ticket, president and deputy. And I'm not impugning anything, but, when we saw these things happen, pre-2010, it was a parting of ways of sorts, and we would move on to the next one. But this is interesting because now we're going to be stuck with this at least until 2027, and then, who knows what happens thereafter. But, one of the things that is unfortunate about this is I think now we are subjected to a national conversation whenever party to, the details of this deal making that was, behind the scenes. So whatever it is they agreed to when they were coming together, to be then on the same ticket that was done behind closed doors, now becomes a matter of national conversation that is held on pulpits, that is held, you name it, just about everywhere. And I think that's the unfortunate thing. I mean, I know how politics works, and of course there's a lot of lobbying and deal making that goes on behind the scenes, but the country is then subjected to this national spat and people speaking to each other, at each other, going around corners for perhaps, reasons that we were never privy to. There was no public participation when these two individuals came together. But suddenly now we must be made party to whatever this is that is making the deputy president so unhappy, whatever darkness this is that he supposedly sees. And then now, the president says, well, there's no darkness and we are praying against, those who see darkness. And there's, one arm saying this, and then, we're evoking memories of 2007. I mean, this is all really unfortunate for things that happen behind closed doors, and then now are made our business and, are thrown and thrust in our faces day after day, weekend after weekend. I think that's the most unfortunate bit about this whole spat that we're seeing again in our country's history.
And unfortunately, that talk about unity. So what exactly is unity supposed to be? Is it when all leaders agree? Or is it when the people of Kenya agree to move in a certain direction?
Who's unity?
And, who's unity? Who's that? We need to find them.
We are unity.
It's elusive.
We know a thing or two about it.
And really. And obviously, especially the image that was painted on Sunday, I think the country needs to take a moment and reflect on what exactly that is. These are people who sit in cabinet to consider policies for the Republic of Kenya. They meet, I suppose, every other week, whether it's under the cabinet committees that are chaired by the deputy president, or is the whole cabinet chaired for dinner. The other one wants to have what? Chips?
Rice.
Or fries?
Yeah.
Or rice. Does that mean there's no unity in that house? And is there a way of having both ugali and fries and something else? So really, that has to be...
Mokimo and Mursik?
Well, that's something to think about.
Yeah.
It might be mountainous, but that has to be unpacked, because what exactly are we talking about here? So moving on, and like Jamila asked, so to what extent? I think many have said that we may need to ignore. Of course, politically, news-wise, you may not ignore. But if those involved do not want to speak about what exactly is happening, maybe we should just let them be.
Yeah. Oh, to be a fly on the wall in those cabinet meetings, huh? When they speak like this at each other at separate public functions, when the deputy president retreats to his home base and speaks in his mother tongue. So what happens?
Yeah, Musitoe at a full stop.
Yeah.
It should be an interesting meeting. Another one of those fly in the wall moments, maybe. Should
right.
Be that one,
yeah, indeed. Yeah. So, Jamila.
Tunateka a break. Ama tunafunga kipindi, ama tunafanya nini?
Unajua kazi yako. Kazi yako ni moja.
We just look at you in the eye.
No, lakini unajua tulimaliza word, ilikuwa first word, si final word.
No.
Yeah.
Our final was
our first, yes. Na tumemaliza hiyo.
So now, with all due respect, Jamila, uko na kazi moja kwa hisho.
Ya kutekebere kama kufunga.
Hapana, ya kufunga. Wewe unalipwa kazi gani ya news gani?